Some days begin like any other and end with your
是呀，
entire life
快点收
turned
尾。
upside down. For me, it started on a quiet Tuesday morning. The sun hung low over the city as people hurried through their routines. Cars filled the streets, coffee shops buzzed with customers, and office workers rushed to beat the morning clock. It seemed like an ordinary day, the kind that blended into hundreds of others. At 28 years old, I had built a simple life that revolved around hard work and staying out of trouble. I worked as an assistant manager for a popular department store located in one of the busiest shopping districts in town. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to live comfortably. My reputation mattered to me. I had spent years proving myself as a dependable employee. I showed up early, stayed late when needed, and treated every customer with respect. The store manager trusted me with inventory, cash handling, and employee supervision. It had taken years to earn that level of trust. I never imagined that trust could disappear in a matter of minutes. The day began smoothly. Shipments arrived on schedule. Employees clocked in. Customers flowed steadily through the doors. Everything followed its normal rhythm until shortly after lunch when a woman walked into the store carrying enough confidence to command attention from everyone around her. The moment she entered, several employees exchanged glances. She was known throughout the shopping district. Her real name was Linda Matthews, but many people privately referred to her as Karen because of her behavior. She had earned a reputation for creating scenes, filing complaints, and demanding special treatment wherever she went. Store employees throughout town knew her name. Managers dreaded seeing her. Customers often stepped away when she started speaking. She carried herself with the certainty of someone who believed rules existed for everyone except her. That afternoon, she headed straight toward the jewelry section. At first, nothing seemed unusual. She examined necklaces, bracelets, and watches while one of our sales associates assisted her. Several customers browsed nearby, and security cameras monitored every angle of the department. I remained busy handling inventory reports in the back office. Nearly 20 minutes later, the calm atmosphere shattered. A loud voice echoed across the store. Heads turned immediately. Employees froze. Customers stopped browsing. The voice belonged to Linda. She stood near the jewelry display, pointing aggressively toward a glass case. Her face burned with outrage. Within seconds, a crowd began forming. I hurried toward the scene. As assistant manager, resolving customer disputes was part of my responsibility. When I arrived, Linda was already accusing everyone around her of incompetence. According to her, an expensive diamond bracelet had vanished. She claimed she had been examining it only moments earlier. Now it was gone. The sales associate looked terrified. The employee insisted the bracelet had been returned to the display case after viewing. Linda refused to believe it. She demanded management. She demanded answers. She demanded accountability. And unfortunately, I became the person standing directly in front of her. The moment she saw my manager badge, her attention shifted toward me. The crowd watched silently. People pulled out phones. Everyone sensed a confrontation brewing. I calmly explained that we would review inventory records and security footage to determine what had happened. That should have been the end of it. Instead, everything escalated. Linda suddenly pointed directly at me. Her eyes narrowed. Her expression transformed from frustration into certainty. Without evidence, without reason, without hesitation, she accused me of stealing the bracelet. The accusation landed like a thunderbolt. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard her. Customers gasped. Employees stared. The entire store fell silent. Then came the second accusation. And the third. And the fourth. According to Linda, I had supposedly removed the bracelet myself and hidden it before she could purchase it. The story made no sense. I hadn't even been near the jewelry department before hearing the commotion. Multiple employees could confirm that. Store cameras could confirm that. Common sense could confirm that. None of it mattered. Linda had decided I was guilty. And once she reached that conclusion, she treated it as undeniable fact. Her voice grew louder. The crowd grew larger. The humiliation grew deeper. Every eye in the store focused on me. Years of hard work suddenly seemed meaningless. I felt the weight of judgment from complete strangers who knew nothing about me. Some customers whispered among themselves. Others recorded videos. A few simply watched the drama unfold. The experience felt surreal. One minute, I was doing my job. The next, I was standing at the center of a public accusation. Store security arrived quickly. My manager arrived shortly afterward. Even then, Linda refused to calm down. She demanded the police. She demanded my arrest. She demanded immediate consequences. The bracelet's value exceeded several $1,000s, making the situation serious. Very serious. Store policy required a full investigation. Police officers were called. What should have been a routine missing item report suddenly became a theft allegation. As everyone waited for law enforcement to arrive, I stood quietly. Anger simmered beneath the surface. Embarrassment gnawed at me. But mostly, I felt disbelief. How could someone accuse another person so confidently without evidence? How could a stranger attempt to destroy someone's reputation so casually? Those questions lingered in my mind as the police entered the store. 2 uniformed officers approached. They separated witnesses. They gathered statements. They began documenting the incident. Linda repeated her accusations with unwavering certainty. She described theories. She presented assumptions. She offered speculation disguised as facts. The officers listened professionally. They took notes. They asked questions. Then they approached me. I provided my statement calmly. I explained where I had been. I explained my responsibilities that day. I explained that security footage would verify everything. The officers seemed reasonable. Still, the process was humiliating. Being questioned in front of coworkers and customers felt like a punishment despite my innocence. The investigation continued for nearly an hour. Store management reviewed inventory logs. Security staff prepared surveillance footage. Witnesses provided statements. Yet Linda remained convinced she was right. The more evidence failed to support her claims, the louder she became. It was as if admitting uncertainty would damage her pride. Then something unexpected happened. One of the officers received a phone call. The conversation lasted less than a minute. When he hung up, his expression changed. He exchanged a glance with his partner. Neither revealed what had happened. But suddenly, they became much more interested in certain details surrounding the case. Details involving Linda herself. At the time, I didn't understand why. None of us did. What I didn't know was that the missing bracelet wasn't the only mystery under investigation that day. And I certainly didn't know that someone much higher up in the department had just become aware of the situation. Someone who happened to know me very well. Someone who knew my character better than anyone. Someone who had spent years building a reputation for uncovering the truth. My older brother. The city's lead detective. As the afternoon shadows stretched across the store floor, events were already moving in a direction Linda never expected. The woman who had publicly accused me believed she was moments away from proving her case. She believed she held all the power. She believed she had found an easy target. What she didn't realize was that the truth was about to expose far more than a missing bracelet. And before the week ended, the accusation she hurled so confidently would trigger a chain of events that would completely change her life. The investigation was only beginning. The real story had not yet been uncovered, and karma was quietly preparing to arrive. The atmosphere inside the department store remained tense long after the initial accusation. Customers slowly returned to their shopping, but whispers lingered throughout the building. Employees attempted to focus on their responsibilities, yet everyone kept glancing toward the security office where investigators continued reviewing evidence. I sat quietly in the manager's office, trying to process everything that had happened. The humiliation still burned. Hours earlier, I had been overseeing inventory reports. Now my name was connected to a theft allegation that dozens of strangers had witnessed. Even though I knew I was innocent, I understood how damaging accusations could be. Rumors often traveled faster than facts. A single public accusation could undo years of hard-earned trust. That reality weighed heavily on me. Meanwhile, Linda Matthews appeared completely confident. She paced through the store with the certainty of someone who believed victory was inevitable. Every few minutes, she approached an officer or manager, demanding updates and insisting that investigators focus on me. Her determination seemed less concerned with finding the missing bracelet and more concerned with proving herself right. That distinction became increasingly noticeable. As the afternoon progressed, security footage from multiple cameras was gathered. The jewelry department alone contained several angles. Every movement around the display cases had been recorded. Store management expected the footage review to quickly settle the matter. After all, cameras rarely lied. People did. Several hours passed. Then the first major crack appeared in Linda's story. The surveillance footage showed the bracelet being removed from the display case by a sales associate and presented to Linda for inspection. That part matched her account. However, what happened next told a different story. The video clearly showed the bracelet being placed back onto the counter before Linda continued browsing. Moments later, several customers moved through the area. Employees assisted shoppers. The department remained busy. But one detail immediately caught investigators' attention. I never appeared anywhere near the jewelry section during the time frame in question. Not once. Not even briefly. Camera footage placed me in multiple other parts of the store. Inventory records supported that timeline. Employee statements supported it too. Within minutes, the allegation against me began falling apart. Any reasonable person would have recognized the mistake. Any reasonable person would have reconsidered. Linda did neither. Instead, she doubled down. She insisted the footage must be incomplete. She suggested there were blind spots. She proposed increasingly unlikely theories to explain why evidence contradicted her accusation. The officers remained professional, yet their patience appeared to be wearing thin. What began as a theft investigation was gradually becoming something else. The more investigators reviewed evidence, the more questions emerged. Not about me. About Linda. One officer requested additional footage from other sections of the store. Another began reviewing timestamps more carefully. Store management seemed confused by the sudden shift in focus. So was I. At that moment, I still had no idea what investigators were seeing. Then, shortly before closing time, someone entered the security office. The room immediately became quieter. Several officers straightened their posture. Store management exchanged surprised glances. The newcomer wasn't a uniformed officer. He wore a plain suit. His expression was calm, focused, experienced. And the moment I saw him, I felt a mixture of relief and surprise. It was my brother, Detective Michael Carter. For nearly 15 years, Michael had built a reputation as one of the most respected investigators in the city. His ability to uncover details others overlooked had solved countless cases. He rarely became involved in incidents as minor as retail theft. That fact alone told me something unusual was happening. Michael acknowledged me with a brief nod before turning his attention toward the investigation. Professionalism came first. Family connections came second. He reviewed reports. He studied footage. He asked questions. And unlike everyone else, he seemed interested in details nobody else considered important. Within 30 minutes, the direction of the investigation changed completely. What Michael noticed wasn't what appeared on camera. It was what didn't appear. Certain movements seemed oddly deliberate. Certain gaps in behavior raised questions. Certain actions suggested planning rather than coincidence. The missing bracelet no longer looked like a random disappearance. It looked orchestrated. The possibility transformed the entire case. If the bracelet hadn't simply been misplaced, then someone had intentionally removed it. And if someone had intentionally removed it, investigators needed to determine who benefited. The answer certainly wasn't me. By late evening, additional footage from nearby businesses was requested. Parking lot cameras were examined. Witness statements were revisited. Investigators expanded the timeline beyond the store itself. The deeper they looked, the more suspicious circumstances appeared. Meanwhile, Linda's confidence began showing small signs of strain. For the first time all day, she seemed nervous. Questions directed toward her became more specific. Her answers became less consistent. Tiny discrepancies started appearing. Nothing dramatic. Nothing conclusive. Just enough to attract attention. Michael noticed every one of them. Years of investigative experience had taught him that lies rarely collapse all at once. Instead, they weakened gradually. Small inconsistencies accumulated until the truth finally emerged. That process appeared to be underway. The following morning, I arrived at work expecting another difficult day. Instead, I found investigators already present. Several officers were reviewing new evidence. Michael stood near the security office speaking with management. The expression on his face suggested significant progress. As employees arrived, rumors spread quickly. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know whether the missing bracelet had been found. No official information was released. Yet something had clearly changed. The investigation no longer centered on me. That alone felt like a victory. Around midday, investigators obtained footage from a nearby parking garage. The footage covered areas beyond the department store's cameras. Vehicles, entrances, pedestrian traffic, movements occurring before and after the alleged theft. What they discovered would eventually become one of the most important breakthroughs in the case. But at that moment, only investigators knew what the footage contained. The rest of us waited. Hours later, Linda returned to the store. Her confidence from the previous day had faded slightly. She still carried herself with authority, but uncertainty now lingered beneath the surface. Investigators immediately requested another interview. This time, the conversation lasted much longer. Questions became more detailed. Timelines became more specific. Officers compared statements against recorded evidence. And with each passing minute, Linda's version of events appeared increasingly fragile. For the first time since making her accusation, she seemed to realize that the spotlight had shifted. The investigators were no longer trying to prove my guilt. They were trying to understand her actions. That realization visibly unsettled her. Still, she maintained her innocence. Still, she insisted she was the victim. Still, she believed she could control the narrative. What she didn't realize was that Michael had already uncovered something far bigger than a missing bracelet. Something connected to multiple incidents. Something extending far beyond one department store. Something that would soon place Linda at the center of an investigation she never saw coming. As evening approached, officers gathered additional documents. Search requests were submitted. Evidence continued accumulating. Piece by piece, a hidden pattern emerged. The woman who had publicly accused me of theft believed she was exposing a criminal. Instead, she had accidentally exposed herself. And by the time the next phase of the investigation began, the truth would become impossible to hide. The case was no longer about a bracelet. It was about deception. And the consequences were rapidly approaching. By the third day, the entire situation had transformed from a simple missing item investigation into one of the most talked about cases in the shopping district. Employees from neighboring stores were discussing it. Business owners were sharing rumors. Customers who had witnessed the original confrontation continued posting videos and opinions online. What began as a public accusation against me had become something much larger. For the first time since the incident, I felt hopeful. The evidence had completely cleared my name. Store management no longer viewed me as a suspect. Coworkers who had quietly worried about the situation now openly supported me. Yet despite that relief, another question remained unanswered. If I hadn't taken the bracelet, then who had? Detective Michael Carter was determined to find out. Unlike many investigators, Michael never rushed to conclusions. He followed evidence wherever it led, even when the answers seemed uncomfortable. And the evidence was leading directly toward Linda Matthews. Not because investigators wanted it to. Because the facts kept pointing in her direction. Throughout the previous 2 days, officers had reviewed surveillance footage from multiple locations. They had interviewed witnesses. They had analyzed timelines. They had examined financial records connected to recent incidents involving expensive merchandise. The deeper they looked, the more troubling the picture became. At first, investigators noticed similarities between the bracelet case and several unresolved complaints from other businesses. The details differed. The locations differed. But the pattern remained surprisingly consistent. A valuable item would disappear. A dramatic confrontation would occur. Someone else would be blamed. The situation would create confusion. And eventually, the case would go cold. Most business owners assumed the incidents were unrelated. After all, retail theft occurred every day. Few people looked for larger connections. Michael did. And what he found was impossible to ignore. Several store managers recognized Linda's name immediately. Not because she was a loyal customer. Because she had been involved in multiple disturbances over the previous 2 years. Complaints, arguments, accusations, refund disputes, security incidents. Her name appeared repeatedly. Individually, none of those events proved wrongdoing. Together, they painted a concerning picture. Investigators began examining those incidents more closely. Then they discovered something even more significant. In several cases, merchandise had gone missing shortly before or shortly after Linda's involvement. The coincidence appeared too frequent to ignore. Still, suspicion wasn't proof. Investigators needed evidence. And evidence finally arrived from an unexpected source. A small boutique located 3 blocks away contacted the police after hearing about the department store investigation. Their manager remembered an incident from several months earlier. An expensive designer watch had vanished under circumstances remarkably similar to the missing bracelet case. At the time, the store lacked enough evidence to pursue charges. The case remained unresolved. However, after reviewing archived footage, the manager noticed something startling. The same customer appeared in both investigations. Linda Matthews. That discovery triggered a major breakthrough. Investigators obtained records from additional businesses. Patterns emerged rapidly. Multiple complaints. Multiple missing items. Multiple accusations directed at innocent employees. Each incident created distractions. Each incident shifted attention away from the actual disappearance. Each incident benefited the same person. The evidence was becoming increasingly difficult to explain away. Meanwhile, Linda appeared unaware of how much investigators had uncovered. She continued, presenting herself as a victim. She continued insisting that authorities pursue action against me. She continued acting as though the investigation remained under her control. It wasn't. Not anymore. By Friday morning, Michael and his team had assembled enough information to seek additional legal authorization. Several records were reviewed. Additional surveillance footage was collected. Financial activity connected to certain purchases and resale transactions drew attention. What investigators discovered next shocked even experienced officers. Some items reported missing from various stores appeared connected to online resale accounts. Those accounts were carefully disguised. Ownership wasn't immediately obvious. Yet digital evidence gradually revealed connections. Connections leading toward Linda. Every new discovery strengthened the case. Every piece of evidence added another layer to the truth. The woman who had publicly accused me now faced serious questions herself. Questions she could no longer avoid. Late that afternoon, investigators requested another formal interview. This time, the atmosphere felt completely different. The confidence Linda displayed during her first accusation had disappeared. The certainty that once fueled her behavior had been replaced by visible anxiety. Witnesses later described her demeanor as defensive and increasingly unpredictable. Investigators presented timelines. They presented surveillance footage. They presented records. They presented inconsistencies. One after another. Piece after piece. The wall she had built around her story began cracking. For hours, she attempted to explain discrepancies. Some explanations contradicted previous statements. Others contradicted documented evidence. Each new answer created additional problems. The truth was catching up. Outside the interview room, I sat quietly with my manager. Neither of us spoke much. The past few days had been emotionally exhausting. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about the moment everything began. One accusation. One public humiliation. One reckless assumption. That single decision had triggered a chain reaction no one could have predicted. Especially Linda. She believed she was targeting an easy victim. Someone who would quietly accept blame. Someone who lacked the resources to defend himself. Instead, her accusation initiated an investigation that exposed years of hidden behavior. Karma had arrived through the very process she tried to manipulate. As evening approached, investigators completed their interview. The atmosphere inside the station changed noticeably. Officers moved with greater urgency. Documents were prepared. Evidence was organized. Supervisors reviewed findings. Something significant was clearly happening. Then the news finally arrived. Investigators had recovered information linking the missing bracelet to a location connected to Linda. The discovery wasn't public yet. Certain procedures still needed completion. But for the first time, authorities knew where the bracelet had likely gone. The case was nearing its conclusion. Word spread quickly among those involved. Store management felt vindicated. Employees felt relieved. I felt something deeper. Closure. Not because someone else was facing consequences. Because the truth was finally emerging. For days, I had lived under the shadow of a false accusation. Now that shadow was disappearing. My reputation remained intact. My integrity remained intact. And the person responsible could no longer hide behind confidence and intimidation. Still, the most dramatic moment had yet to come. The evidence investigators gathered was strong. Very strong. But Michael wanted certainty. He wanted a conclusion supported by undeniable facts, the kind that left no room for excuses, no room for manipulation, no room for escape. By the end of the weekend, he would get exactly that. And when the final piece of evidence surfaced, Linda Matthews would discover a painful lesson. The damage we cause others often finds its way back to us. Sometimes slowly, sometimes unexpectedly. But eventually, truth has a way of demanding accountability. And the final reckoning was only hours away. By Monday morning, the investigation had reached its final stage. For nearly a week, detectives had worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the missing bracelet and the growing list of suspicious incidents connected to Linda Matthews. What began as a public accusation against me had evolved into a case built on evidence, patterns, and facts that could no longer be ignored. The tension surrounding the investigation had spread throughout the city. Store owners wanted answers. Employees wanted justice. And everyone involved wanted to know how the story would end. Unlike rumors, however, real investigations depended on proof. Detective Michael Carter understood that better than anyone. He refused to rush. He refused to make assumptions. He refused to announce conclusions until every piece of evidence had been verified. That patience ultimately made all the difference. Over the weekend, investigators executed the final legal steps necessary to examine property connected to the case. The results exceeded expectations. The missing diamond bracelet was recovered. Not misplaced. Not lost. Not accidentally taken. Recovered. And its location created a direct connection to Linda Matthews. The discovery alone was significant. But it wasn't the only thing investigators found. Additional items linked to previous unresolved theft reports were also identified. Some matched descriptions from complaints filed months earlier. Others corresponded to incidents that businesses had long since written off as unsolvable. One by one, cold cases suddenly began making sense. The pattern detectives suspected now stood fully exposed. The confrontations, the accusations, the distractions, the chaos, everything fit together. For years, innocent employees and business owners had been left questioning themselves after incidents involving Linda. Many assumed they simply lacked evidence. Many blamed security failures. Many accepted financial losses and moved on. Now they finally understood what had really happened. The truth had been hiding behind confidence, behind manipulation, behind public outrage carefully designed to redirect attention. The strategy worked for a long time. Until it didn't. As investigators finalized their findings, legal proceedings moved forward. Linda could no longer explain away inconsistencies. She could no longer blame misunderstandings. She could no longer control the narrative. Evidence spoke louder than accusations. And evidence had become overwhelming. News of the investigation spread quickly through the local business community. Managers who had once dreaded dealing with Linda shared their experiences. Former employees remembered uncomfortable encounters. Business owners revisited old reports. Stories that once seemed isolated suddenly connected like pieces of a puzzle. The picture they formed wasn't flattering. It revealed a pattern of behavior built on intimidation and manipulation. Most disturbing of all, it revealed how easily public perception could be weaponized. People often assume confidence equals truth. Linda had relied on that assumption. When she accused me inside the department store, many witnesses immediately viewed me with suspicion. Not because they knew anything about me. Because accusations are powerful, especially when delivered loudly. The experience taught me a lesson I would never forget. Being innocent doesn't always protect you from judgment. Sometimes people decide what they believe before evidence ever appears. That realization stayed with me long after the investigation ended. Yet despite everything that happened, I refused to become bitter. Bitterness would only allow the experience to continue controlling my life. Instead, I focused on gratitude. Gratitude for coworkers who supported me. Gratitude for managers who trusted the investigative process. Gratitude for officers who followed facts rather than assumptions. And gratitude for my brother. Not because he was family, because he was a professional. Throughout the entire case, Michael treated me exactly as he would any other person. He never asked for special treatment. He never used his position unfairly. He simply pursued the truth. That commitment protected not only me, but countless others affected by the same pattern of behavior. A few weeks later, life inside the department store finally returned to normal. Customers shopped peacefully. Employees focused on their work. The jewelry department became just another part of the store again. The viral videos and online discussions gradually faded, as they always do. But some things remained. Store management publicly acknowledged my professionalism throughout the investigation. Coworkers who witnessed the accusation gained a deeper appreciation for fairness. Several businesses implemented improved procedures to prevent similar incidents. And perhaps most importantly, many people learned the danger of rushing to judgment. The experience changed me. Before the incident, I believed honesty alone was enough. I believed that if a person lived responsibly, accusations could never seriously threaten them. I was wrong. Truth matters. But truth often requires patience. Sometimes innocence must wait for evidence to catch up. Fortunately, evidence eventually does. Months later, I found myself standing in the same department where the entire nightmare began. Customers browsed nearby. Employees organized displays. The store felt peaceful, almost ordinary. As I looked around, it was difficult to believe how much chaos had unfolded in that exact location. One reckless accusation had nearly damaged my reputation. One false claim had created public humiliation. One person's arrogance had affected countless lives. Yet in the end, none of it survived contact with the truth. That realization brought an unexpected sense of peace. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Peace. Because justice isn't about watching others suffer. It's about restoring what was damaged. My reputation had been restored. My name had been cleared. And the truth had prevailed. In many ways, that was enough. Looking back, the greatest irony remained impossible to ignore. Linda's downfall began the moment she pointed her finger at someone innocent. She believed she was creating a distraction. Instead, she created scrutiny. She believed she was controlling the situation. Instead, she exposed herself. She believed her accusations would shield her from consequences. Instead, they triggered the investigation that ultimately uncovered everything. That is the thing about karma. It doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives through ordinary events. A security camera. A witness. A forgotten detail. A detective who notices something others overlook. Or a false accusation aimed at the wrong person. In the end, the lesson was simple. Character matters. Truth matters. And no matter how confident a lie appears, it can never permanently outrun the facts. Because sooner or later, the truth catches up. And when it does, karma delivers its verdict.